All right, so let's talk about testing. I would like to continue working on the exercise that I presented yesterday. So essentially, you remember, guys, on our last workshop, we just built a basic get welcome component where, depending on the data the component received, then we were supposed to display a different type of message to the user, right? So for guest users, we will say yes, welcome to the app. If we receive the first name of the user within as part of an object, we say welcome to the app, and then the first name of the user. If, however, we receive the last name, then we said, welcome to the app, Mr. or Mrs. or whatever the last name is. So first of all, let me start the test, npm run test, just to make sure everything works. And then if everything is okay, we'll continue. We'll take it from there. So I'm expecting to have 3 tests passing. Here we go. So yeah, that was okay to me. So now I would like to present you 2 ways or 2 steps towards improving the readability of my tests. So first of all, as you can see, I got 3 tests, yeah? 1, 2, and 3. In reality, the structure of the tests is the same. You see, expect, get welcome, argument, to be. So the structure, the shape of the tests is the same. The only difference is the argument changes. In the first example, we don't have any argument. On the second case, we have an object with the first name. On the last use case scenario, we have an object with the last name. And we also change the output, of course. Depending on the input, we change the output. But the structure is the same. So what's my point here? My point here is whenever you face this type of test, and that will happen very often. For instance, when you want to check if an email address is correct and you play with 20 email address with without the .com.co.uk, different type of addresses, the test is the same. You just want to bomb. You want to bomb your function with different data to make sure that your algorithm reacts as expected on every single scenario. So whenever you got that, we can introduce something called test unrolling. So that technique is very popular in many companies, and this is about simplifying your test. So how can I simplify my test? I got 3 tests with the same structure, so why don't I create an array of tests, let's say. So look what we can do. So I can create an array of objects, yeah? So in these 3 lines, I'm creating an array of objects. So then I can set up the dynamic properties of each test. So first of all, the title. Then I can set up the user. So in the first case will be undefined. And then I can set up the expectation. Expected welcome to the app. Yep, you see the idea? So I got 3 tests. Let me copy the first one. 1, 2, and 3. So now I can actually, do pretty much the same thing. Let me copy the second title. I'm just going to make sure that I'm passing the correct information on each case. Yeah? So I got the user, and then what we expect is welcome to the app Peter, in case we got the first name. And then finally, if the only thing we got is the last name, pretty much the same thing, right? So we got the title, and then we got the user with the last name, whatever it is. So finally, let's pass the expectation. Yeah, you see, I'm creating an array. Someone is connecting. Who's connecting? Here you go, Prima. Okay, cool. So guys, I'm creating an array of tests. So now the point is, because I got an array, I can do something like that. For each. And now, my question for you guys is, can anybody tell me how to complete this exercise? Eventually, I will get rid of these 3 tests because these 3 tests are going to be replaced by this rolling structure, yeah, an array of tests. So if the argument is called a scenario, for instance, can anybody tell me what should I type to complete the exercise and where? Say it again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Brilliant. That's perfect, Ian. You got the job, right? That's the way it works. So now I can safely remove the three tests at the bottom. So um, I hope you agree with me by doing this change. So first of all, the test file is shorter. Yeah, I got only 23 lines, so I had to write less. I'm less likely to fail because I'm not repeating myself. I'm just typing expect once. I'm calling the function once. Yeah. So I hope you agree with me. The code is more compact. And also, if from a readability point of view, guys, imagine that I land on this project. I have no idea what the project is about. I have no idea what the welcome function is supposed to do. Just by reading the array, that should give me a good feeling about how the function behaves. Yeah? So once again, this is what we call test rolling or test unrolling. Yeah? So that's a process of dealing with very similar tests where they just have different input, in this case the user, and a different output based on the input, of course, which is the expected message that we want to capture out of that function. So once again, many companies they follow that pattern. However, it is true that many other companies they don't follow this pattern. So if in a job interview you present them that type of coding or testing structure, I'm sure they will be very positive surprise. Either because they follow it and they are not expecting you to know that, or they are happy because you know that, or because they don't know that and then say, okay, what the hell is that? Oh, that's very great. We never thought about doing this, right? So just bear in mind that this is an option when dealing with multiple similar executions of the same functions, just passing different input and expecting different output. So, questions? Hello? Cool. Thank you, guys. So that was the first part I wanted to present you, how to scale your test. So now, as you can imagine, I could create more last names. So if the last name is Jackson, so welcome to the app, Mr. and Mrs. Jackson. Yeah, you could do something like that. And then hopefully once. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Me personally, I will never write that line of code. Tell me, is it covering on the right hand side any piece of code we didn't test before? Not at all. Not at all. Not at all, guys. Because the new test is essentially testing line number 6. Yeah, you getting that? But line number 6 was already tested by the previous test. So yeah, of course, I may add 2 million tests passing all the available last names in the world. But I hope you agree with me that's completely stupid, right? So don't do that. Don't do that. So don't add more tests than necessary. So the idea, in an ideal world, all your lines should be tested. So if a line is already tested, then get rid of it. Because then it's making everything else more complicated than necessary, right? So keep it simple, guys. Keep it simple. All right, so that's one thing. And now, let me introduce you something quite interesting called BDD. Have you ever heard about BDD, guys? Do you know what it stands for? That's correct, Pano. So we got TDD, which is test-driven development, but we also got BDD, behavior-driven development. So what the hell BDD is? So BDD is, let me tell you the high-level idea, and then we'll talk about details. So the high-level idea about BDD is, okay, I told you before that TDD is very useful to serve as a source of documentation for your project. If I want to know what the hell the welcome message does, I check the test, and that gives me some basic understanding about the method. Fantastic. But I hope you agree with me that only works with technical people. Yeah. If I share that code with Minji or with Panos or with Dan or with whoever, because they know what an array is, they will understand that code. Yeah. So that's fine. However, if we receive in our company a new business analyst or even a new UX designer, and they want to understand how do we welcome users, it's not feasible to tell them, please check that file and you will understand what that code does. Because this is very technical. Yeah, I hope you agree on that. This is very technical. So the idea on DDD is to soften the learning curve for non-technical people. Try to force non-technical people, business analysts, product owners, UX designers, etc. Try to force them to understand how the product they work for works by reading the tests. That's the idea. That's the idea behind BDD. Personally, I think that doesn't make any sense. I've never worked on any company where that theory has worked out. Yeah, so that doesn't work. Non-technical people will always struggle to read tests, regardless of how you write them. Yeah, but hey, if you work with business analyst with some basic coding skills, it may work. Yeah, so nothing is actually black or white. So the idea with BDD is try to write the test in a more natural, in a more human-friendly fashion. Yeah. So what's the idea? The idea is let's restructure a bit the test, and the way to restructure it is by dividing it in few bits and pieces. This is what we call the triple A pattern, which is arrange, then act, and then assert. Triple A. Yeah. Also known as given, when, then. Yeah. So that's a way to describe your tests. So the idea is you type something like arrange or given. So this is where you prepare your test. So what do I need to prepare? Well, first of all, what's my data? My data is user equals scenario.user. Yeah? Okay, so I got my user. So then act. What's the action? So the action is call the function. Yeah, so I want to call the function get welcome passing that user. And I want to capture the result because eventually I'll play with them in a second on the assert or then part. So expected result to be scenario.expected, something like that. Yeah. So now I can get rid of the last line. You see, I've done nothing apart from moving things around. Yeah, I've created 3 separated steps. First of all, I'm preparing my test. This is my data I want to deal with. Then I take an action that, generally speaking, is calling a function, yeah, or invoking a component in React, whatever. Yeah, take the action. And then, all right, so what's the consequence of that action? So I say the result, and then I expect something. You see? Arrange, act, assert, or given, when, then. Does it make sense, guys? It's just readability. You see, it's just a way you structure your code. There aren't any strict guidelines about how to deal with that. It is true that there are some frameworks where you can have a function called given, and then I have data, and then you. So there are some frameworks to optimize that. But for now, I don't really care about that. Even if you add a comment, like that. That should help a bit. That should help a bit to describe your test. Once again, that's not very strict. So for instance, what happens if I destructure the scenario? Of course, I can just get it, user, and expected, right? So if I do that, we don't need to access a scenario dot anymore. So now you can see the arrange step is necessary, yeah, because we got the variable already offered by the test, but that's fine. That's fine. So don't go crazy with the arrange act assert. That's just a way to describe your test. It goes without saying. Actually, that's wrong. That's wrong, guys. That's let me run the test again. But I did something wrong. You'll see in a minute. Out of coincidence, I'm calling the title of my test IT or it, yeah. But I cannot use IT because that's a reserved keyword when talking about testing. You see that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So that was a bit unfortunate from my end. But I will simply rename to, I don't know, title or description. Once again, guys, there aren't strict guidelines when talking about testing, apart from, common sense, right? So common sense tells me that if I rename it something like description or title or heading, I don't know, whatever, something like that, that should be okay. So let's make sure the test pass once I trigger them again. And I think that should be it. So do you have any questions in the meantime? Hello? Anyone else apart from Dan? Thank you, Dan. Cool. All right, so that's pretty much it about testing, guys. That's pretty much it about testing. As you can see, it's not that complicated. To me, the key for success when talking about testing is just practice, 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 as everything, as everything. But specifically talking about testing, it becomes vital. Yeah, the more you test, the more comfortable you deal with that. Now, let me present you something a bit unrelated. You know, when you I'll try to open a new tab in my Google Chrome. Have you heard, guys? I'm sure you have, about the food pyramid, where when you go to the doctor or the nutrition, and because you want to go on a diet, and they always present you that sort of pyramid, right? Where the pyramid is distributed by, there are two dimensions in this pyramid. Yeah, I'm not going to present the details; it's not relevant. But at the bottom of the pyramid, you get like the fundamentals of every diet, like fruit, vegetables, all these sort of things. Yeah, and that row is obviously bigger, is larger, is wider, because that means that the majority of the time you should be eating that type of food, right? So the more you climb on the pyramid, the less healthy, let's say, the aliments, the food is, right? Um, so that tells you essentially how your diet should be distributed. That's pretty much the idea. That's pretty much the idea. So you may be thinking, why is this guy presenting a food pyramid now? The reason is because when talking about testing, we can do a testing pyramid as well. So let me present you different types of testing. I think that never really worked out for me, but let me do my best. So I would like to just to share some keywords about how you should test your components. So something like that. So let me just draw a basic pyramid. So just 1 second, couple more. I just made up the number of rows, so it may not be fully accurate, but just to have a starting point. Yeah. So you see, this is what I like to call the testing pyramid. I just made that thing up, guys. So probably you're not sure if you're going to find something similar on the internet, right? So this is based on my experience after being after participating on the testing of all the products I've been working on for more than 10 years. So what do we have at the bottom of the testing pyramid? At the bottom of the testing pyramid, we have what we call essentially linting. Have you heard, guys, about the word linting before? So, guys, yeah, so Panos, go for it. Exactly, exactly, exactly. That's it, Panos. So, guys, when you are running a JavaScript challenge or a React challenge, the elegance console, where it tells you missing semicolon or wrong indentation or weird variable name, things like that. To me, that sits at the very bottom of the testing pyramid. Why? So what's the criteria to decide if linting is here or is on top? So the criteria is, so the quick, sorry, I'm trying to find the right words, right? So the quickest, the quicker, easier, the quicker and easier to deal with. So let me rephrase that. The easier to deal with and the quicker to run or to evaluate, the more to the bottom that should go. Yeah. So linting. Why linting is the easiest thing to deal with and the quickest thing? Because linting essentially means you're writing some code and there is some tooling, there is a process that is evaluating the quality of your code all the time. So it doesn't require too much effort to set up, because at the end of the day, you just need to start a process. We'll see in a minute what sort of process are we talking about, and it will vomit any warning about your code. Yeah. So this is something very easy to maintain. So what sort of tooling are we talking when dealing with linting? Obviously, there are different solutions available out there. When talking about JavaScript and friends, the de facto standard these days, guys, is called eslean. Yeah, so you will see I'm leaving some keywords here in case you are curious, even though that goes beyond the scope of the bootcamp. You can practice a bit and you can install it and you can play with it. Yeah. So eslean that we are using at the Codery platform is a very interesting tool that you can set up locally. It's just npm install eslean, so it's super easy to set up, and then you can set it up to track all your files, all your components written in JavaScript, in React, in any JavaScript framework. Yeah. So whenever you create a new file, like for instance, welcome, and then if I set up the wrong indentation on line number 2, linting will complain. That doesn't mean that the code won't necessarily fail, because linting is about, in many occasions, styling, coding styles. So that's not necessarily gonna make your code fail, but it's the most. That's a good question. Panos. Not, does it? I don't know. Maybe it comes out of the box. So create React app eslean. I have no idea, to be honest. I don't. I may be wrong. But I don't think that comes built in. However, the process of installing it is pretty much the same thing as, for instance, what you explained today about SAS. npm install. Yeah, so it's very simple. That's very simple. Yeah. So that's the first step, linting. What else do we have about linting? So about linting, we got unit testing. So that's essentially what we've seen between yesterday and today. Unit testing means I got a function get welcome, I call it, and I expect an output. Yeah. So by the way, talking about timing, because here it said the quicker to evaluate. So eslean takes milliseconds. It's very quick, right? It takes milliseconds to evaluate your code. Yeah. When talking about unit testing, some keywords here, in case you are curious. So thankfully, unit testing comes, as you know, completely set up with your Create React app, so you don't have to install anything. However, let me tell you which tools may help you to deal with unit testing. So some keywords here are things like Jasmine. So Jasmine is a test runner. You got things like Mocha, which is another test runner. I think these days Mocha is even more popular than Jasmine, because as far as I know, Mocha works really well front and back, while Jasmine is mostly front end oriented. Uh, you got assertion libraries like Chai, never know how to pronounce that word, guys. So Chai is essentially the tool that we use when you said expect true to be true. Yeah, that to be, this is a method provided by Chai. In reality, when talking about Chai, the syntax is slightly different. So instead of to be, is to.be. So there are some subtle differences. I don't want to explain the details now, but just FYI, Chai is a very important tool when talking about unit testing. And finally, let me tell you something called signon or sign-on. So signon is very useful for mocking. Let me present you an example. Imagine that you have a function and get movies, and the function get movies will do a fetch request to the backend to do whatever, to get the movies, whatever. Yeah. Obviously, when you do a unit test, you don't really want to communicate with the backend. That's the entire principle of unit testing. You test one thing. You test the front end. You don't really want to go to the backend and get the data, because what happens if the backend is broken? Yeah, it will have some impact on your unit tests. Yeah, you don't want to do that here. When talking about unit test, we want to isolate our components, and in this aspect, signon is very important, because with signon we can say, hey, okay, you want to go to the backend. In reality, don't actually call the backend. Just fake it out by returning an array of 2 movies, whatever. Yeah. So when talking about faking, mocking, simulating things, sign-on is very, 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 very popular. What else do we have on top of unit testing? So, well, unit testing, generally speaking, the test take, I don't know, they're very quick to run, generally speaking. So we're talking about 10 seconds, even though it's probably less than that. But if you got, for instance, I've been working in products with 5,000 tests that took 30 seconds to run. So I hope you agree with me. It's good timing. Yeah. So it's the unit test used to run very, very quickly. About unit testing, you got things like component testing. So component testing, which is also built in with Create React app, so you don't have to install anything. So here, this is essentially, guys, the React training you got on the platform. Yeah. So component testing is about testing React components. Yeah. So that means if I got a function counter, imagine that you got a button. So I'm talking about React now. Yeah. So then I set up my hook. So counter set counter equals use state 0. So then you do the return, and then you do div with your button on it, and then you do the on click equals set counter +1. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, you remember, guys? I think we already explained this very same example when introducing hooks a couple of weeks ago. So with component testing, we can actually check that, for instance, if we got a button and a label, number of click times, and then counter, if you got something like that, you can create a component test where you can actually prove that. So in your test, you can do button.click. You see, you can simulate by the first time, you can simulate some sort of basic user interaction. That doesn't open any browser. So it doesn't run, it doesn't open your app, it doesn't open a new tab, localhost 3000, whatever. No. All these things happen virtually in memory. Yeah, but this is what we call component testing. If you haven't choose your workshop yet, I know a couple of you didn't choose your workshop. Not sure if Minji and maybe someone else. I think that's a really good topic. I've said that a few times already. It's a really good topic because companies are really demanding people with these skills, component testing. Yeah. Some keywords here. So here, a couple of keywords. First of all, we got Jest. So Jest is the test runner that enables React testing somehow, and also you got Enzyme. So Enzyme is another utility to test React components. Once again, I don't want to get into details, but just with the combination of Jest and Enzyme, you can test React components. And all these things are already built in with your Create React application. Yeah. Enzyme, by the way, was created by Airbnb, and now is being used globally. It's very popular. Component tests also take seconds to run. It is true that, generally speaking, they are slower than unit tests. Yeah, but the idea is pretty much the same thing. When talking about seconds, still pretty fast to run. What else do we have on top of the pyramid? We got something called functional testing. So when talking about functional testing, by the first time ever, when we trigger the tests, we are gonna the test will open a new tab in your browser, and you will have a proper browser testing your application. So when talking about functional testing, we're actually simulating user behavior. Yeah. Let me show you something on top of that, because they are very similar. On top of functional testing, you got integration, or also called end-to-end testing. So what's the difference between integration and functional testing? The tools are the same. JavaScript within the last couple of years has massively evolved when talking about these two levels, which is great. Historically speaking, it was a pain in the ass to perform proper browser testing with JavaScript. Today, that got much easier. So the keyword, let me show you the two most recent testing frameworks when talking about integration and functional testing. So it's called, not Enzyme, sorry, Cypress and Test Cafe. These are the most important testing frameworks in the new way of JavaScript testing frameworks for integration and functional testing, because they massively simplify the process of setting up your laptop. In other words, both Cypress and Test Cafe, the only thing they need is to get installed with npm install. Yeah, that's it. Before these two frameworks were originally released, it was much more complicated. You had to install proper testing software. Not sure if you heard about things like Selenium, things like WebDriver. So you had to install some desktop software tooling. Yeah, downloading the binary, double-click, install, acceptance and conditions, blah 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 blah. Yeah, so that got massively simplified thanks to these tools. Yeah, these tests are obviously more complicated to deal with. So we are talking about still seconds, but clearly slower than the component and the unit test alternative. So now, what's the difference between functional testing and integration testing? So the main difference is, with functional testing, we isolate the front end. We have a real browser, true, with your application, true, for instance, your Codeflix application. However, the backend is not running. We only have the front end. we simulate the backend, we emulate the backend. Why? Because once again, we want to isolate the frontend. If the frontend fails, thanks to functional testing, we know that the problem is on the backend. It cannot be on the backend, sorry, on the frontend. The problem cannot be on the backend because we are just testing the frontend, not the backend. With the integration and end-to-end testing, as you can imagine already, it's on the other way around. We really want to test the whole journey, front end to back end. So if you click on a button on your front end application, we really want to call to the back end. Yeah. So yeah, we got these two types of testing. The setup is very similar. The only thing that changes is when talking about Cypress or not test case, test cafe. Sorry, that's wrong. When talking about Cypress or test cafe, you can actually configure whether you really want to go to the backend or you want to mock it out. We are almost on top of the pyramid. There is one more thing, and this is also the newest way of testing your application. If you manage, guys, to build an app with all these levels of testing, I'm sure the quality of your app will be awesome. If you, by accident, introduce a bug, I'm sure your testing layers at some point will be able to spot it. However, can you think, guys, about any particular aspect of coding that hasn't been properly tested in this pyramid? Any thoughts? That's correct. The UI, Adam. That's correct. Let me give you an example. Imagine I'm Google. I'm the owner of Google. And I got thousands, millions of tests to check that all the searches, everything was fine. However, by accident, someone changes the background color of google.com from white to pink. You see the problem? None of these tests will be able to spot the problem. Because even if we manage to open a browser, the machine won't understand whether the background color is blue, white, or pink. The only thing they will do, they will enter a search query and they will check that there are some results. But they won't check that from a user point of view, pink is a good color or not. Okay? That has been almost impossible to test, historically speaking. Yeah. However, now when talking about automated tests, we got something really cool called CSS or visual regression testing. Yeah. So this is something super cool. That's actually, guys, what you've been playing with at the UI training. The way this works is you got your web application, you got your CodeFit application, yeah, and today the CodeFit application works fine. So what you do is, first of all, you take a reference screenshot. Like, hey, that screenshot I'm taking is literally a screenshot. It's a picture. That the screenshot that you take is correct. So now, whenever someone wants to merge new code into the upstream, so when merging into upstream, then what you do is you take a test screenshot. So can anybody tell me what's the step number 3? No, you got the 2 screenshots already. So you got the screenshot that exactly, you compare them. That's it, guys. You compare them. So you literally compare pixel by pixel that these 2 screenshots should match. Yeah. So if my original screenshot, the google.com website had a white background, and suddenly someone tried to add a new change with a pink background, obviously the CSS or visual regression testing will spot the changes. Yeah. So when talking about visual regression testing, the tool that we are using, it's called Backstop.js. And obviously it takes a while to set it up. and the tests are slower to run. We're talking about, I don't know, 20s of seconds, right? So obviously you don't want to test every single screenshot on any single view on your app, but at least the main ones, the homepage, the login, this type of views, it can be clearly tested. So that's quite new. That's quite new, guys. I introduced visual regression testing at HSBC in 2017. So this is still some sort of experimental. Yeah? I'm sure you'll have some oddities and things not working as you may expect. But I'm convinced that at some point in the future, it will become vital to know CSS testing. Yeah. So once again, yeah. No, go for it. Go on, please. Yeah, but yeah, of course, I've been using them. I've been using these things quite a lot. But the problem with Phantom and Casper is so if you want to work with Phantom, Casper, etc., they work on top of things like WebDriver. So the setup of these tools is way more complicated. Yeah, that's why even though you are right, Panos, many companies are still using these things. As soon as they realize there is something called Cypress, I'm sure they'll be more than keen to migrate because many companies struggle a lot to orchestrate this tooling. Yeah. Uh, Yep. So that's the testing pyramid. Do you have to know all these things? Of course not, right? I mean, you have to know these things once you want to make 700 a day, right? But you don't need them. You don't need all these things for now. Of course, it goes without saying that the more you practice with these things, the better in a better position you'll be on the market. Yeah, because companies really appreciate these things. So personally, I would like to invite you to, even if you obviously don't master any of this, to practice a bit. I mean, excuse me, things like CSS regression testing. 80%, 90% of companies, they don't even know that exist. So if you go to a job interview and you prove that you've done a bit of research and hey, look, and I have created this basic project and to test my websites, my portfolio, for instance, it's a way to put your balls on the table because they will be extremely surprised that that thing even existed, and you know that already, right? So that gives you some extra points in that hiring process. Any questions, guys? Go for it. Yeah. Yeah, so load testing, no, I didn't even want to consider it because to me, that's probably more a DevOps oriented thing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, once again, guys, this is my interpretation of testing as a developer. But obviously, there are other layers. So, panels refer about load testing. So things like how do you check if our infrastructure is good enough to support if you try to access, for instance, the Morrison website recently, guys, I tried to access to buy some online food, to try to buy some online groceries, and I got redirected to a web page saying, "Hey, our servers are out of control. There are 24K people trying to access the website. The estimated queue to access the website is 27 minutes." It was the first time in my life I accessed a website with a queue, and I had to wait 27 minutes to join the website. Yeah. So yeah, obviously that's because they got some load testing framework that tells them that if we got more users than whatever number, we're gonna have problems, right? We also got things like penetration testing. Of course, we got human testing. So that's not rocket science. That's just an approximation. That's what I will personally invite you to do, to follow in order to do testing. And personally, I would like to invite you to start from the bottom, yeah, because learning how to do eslean may take you 30 minutes. Learning how to do backstop may take you, I don't know, 4 days. Yeah, so that's why with the course of learning CSS visual regression testing, you can learn a bit of linting, unit, and component testing, for example. Right. So start from the bottom, and once you got some basic understanding about this level, then move to the next one. What else, guys? Thank you, Panos. Yes, yes. Everything at the end, there are a bunch of metrics that are highly related. The metrics are, as I mentioned here. So metrics are speed, metrics are simplicity, and that's pretty much it, right? So and eventually, based on these two metrics, the side effect is how many tests do I have. So obviously, the faster a given layer is and the simpler it is to deal with, what's the side effect? You will have more tests at that layer. Yeah. So when talking about unit testing, eventually, a complex application may have thousands of tests. But when talking about CSS regression testing, you may have maybe 20. Why? Because the time it takes to run 5,000 tests may be the same as running 20 tests here. Yeah, and also these tests, visual regression tests, these are likely to fail. In other words, what happen if I change my homepage on purpose, then my screenshots will fail. So I will have to generate a new reference picture. So there is some sort of maintenance when talking about these levels. That's a good question. Of course you have. So when you take a screenshot, I mean, guys, when I said you take a screenshot, I'm not telling you manually take a screenshot of your web application. No. So Backstops looks after that. Backstop you tell it, please now take a screenshot. Take a screenshot of this URL and take the screenshot of this URL in these different view sizes. So I want to take a screenshot for mobile, for tablet, and for desktop, for instance. Yeah. Yeah. No. But wait. But this happens automatically, Adam. So you decide the dimensions of your web app. For instance, you said, "Hey, I want to take a screenshot at 124 by 768. That's my desktop resolution, for example. So when you take the reference screenshot, that's the resolution, 124 by 768. When someone tries to merge new code into the upstream, the new screenshot, the test screenshot will take obviously at the very same resolution, 124 by 768. Otherwise, it will be absolutely impossible to check whether the new code, the new UI matches the original one. Yeah. So you set up a bunch of viewports. For instance, desktop 124 by 768. Tablet, I don't know, 800 by 600. Mobile, 500 by 300. And then, of course, you can play with landscape, portrait mode. So you can definitely set up a good bunch of test use cases scenarios. Yeah. We just need to keep in mind that obviously the more screenshots the test runner has to take, the slower the process will be. Yeah. Cheers, Adam. I'm going to share that weird pyramid with you guys on the general channel. Um, is there anything else, guys? Any final questions? Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah. Yeah, first of all, you don't start from scratch, Adam, because probably even if you didn't notice, you already know a bit of React testing, because that's essentially what you got on the Codiri platform. That's React testing. We present you the test, now you build the functionality. It's some sort of TDD if you think about it. So React testing is pretty simple. It's pretty simple because it sounds quite natural. It is true that there are some oddities, as usual, guys, as usual. There are always some oddities. But at least learning how to deal with the basics of your component, like, hey, I got a button, I want to click on the button, and I want to see the reaction. What happened when I click on the button? That's pretty simple. Or I have a component, and I want to see what happens if I click on the component and I want to pass props to another component. That's pretty simple. So I'm sure, guys, look, we got 2 bank holidays, right? We got bank holiday this Friday, we got another bank holiday on Monday. If you dedicate 2 days to component testing, I'm sure you'll be on a fantastic position to impress the employer. Absolutely. Because first of all, Adam, you don't need to set up anything. So most of the frustration here is about how to set up my components, how to deal with dependencies. But thankfully with Create React App, you got everything by yourself. So you don't need to do anything. You just need to start practicing. You create a basic component with React and then you test it. Thank you, Adam. Anything else, guys? So once again, guys, don't. I know this is a bit overwhelming. As I told you yesterday, we could run a workshop, we could run a bootcamp just to talk about testing, of course. But the message here is this is not for tomorrow. This is take it as a long-term plan. Long-term plan. Yeah. So if you know a bit of unit testing, that should be enough to get a job to break into tech. Then once you start working as a, once you want to climb to your next position, try to focus more on functional testing. Once you want to get a senior position, then integration. So, take it as a long-term path in your career. At least I like to have some breadcrumbs to tell you where to go on each step of your career. So if you don't have any other questions, guys, that was pretty much it from my side. So thank you very much for watching and see you soon.